So today we're going to follow up on our discussion that we have been having about density for the past couple of days. And what I have here is I want you guys to take a look at the eggs in these glasses. Notice that the first one, what is the egg doing? It's sinking obviously to the bottom of the glass, right? And if you look at this second glass, it kind of looks like it's just suspended in just in the water, just hanging out right there in the middle. Now what about this third glass? Have you ever heard of a floating egg? Well, today we're going to learn how to do floating eggs. But the first thing that I want to do is I want to discuss what your guys' ideas are on why you think that we have one egg that's sunk, one egg that is suspended in solution, and one egg that is completely floating. So what are your thoughts on what could be causing these eggs to be doing different things? First thing I want you to think of is, what have we been talking about the past couple days? Density, right? So what can you tell me about this water right here? Would you say it's more dense or less dense than the egg? How about this middle one? And what about the third? Would you say the water is more dense or the egg is more dense? Thinking about that because when we do our lab today, which is going to include each of you guys getting into a pair or maybe a group of 3, whichever you prefer, and you're going to get together and we're going to draw out of a hat. You're going to get 2 different values. You're going to get you're going to get the instructions, and then you'll get what you can do with 2 different values of how much water you're going to use and how much salt you're going to use. So what we're going to do, you're going to vary how much salt we use, because obviously the way that I made these floating and sinking eggs is by salt. I added salt to this one, therefore making the egg float. I added salt to this one, but then I poured some of it out and I poured fresh water on top. Now unless the water is mixed, the egg is going to just stay suspended in the salt water, but not in the fresh water. The sinking egg is the fresh water. And let's talk about this middle one here. When you have a more dense fluid, what is it going to do? The denser it is, it's going to sink to the bottom. And then what about less dense fluids? Less dense are going to rise to the top, and that's what's going to cause, it's just kind of going to float, and that's what's causing the egg to just float on the more dense salt water on the bottom. Now I want you to think about this in terms of what we've been discussing with different ecosystems and different systems of the world. So we've been discussing about how you have the fresh water and you have salt water, but what happens when they mix? What happens in those estuaries? What happens when you have salt water coming in and fresh water coming in? What's going to happen with the salt water, and what's going to happen with the fresh water? So now, while you're sitting here thinking about how you're going to do this demonstration and how it relates, I want you to be thinking about what exactly is this demonstrating? How does it make it so that, why does the salt make it so that one egg floats and one egg that doesn't have salt sinks? What is the salt doing? The second thing I want you to think about is what happens to debris that's in a freshwater estuary. What happens when those 2 types of waters mix? Whatever is in each of those waters, what happens to them? Do they continue to stay in the same water, or do they go into the opposite water? And what happens with any kind of debris that is brought in? Does it sink or does it float? So I want you to be thinking about that. And how is the marine life going to be affected by this? What happens when freshwater and saltwater mix? And what's going to happen to any of the marine life that is in there? So when you do your lab, you're going to put 250 milliliters of water into each cup. And then at that point, you're going to take one of the cups and you're going to leave it alone. You're not going to put any salt in it. You're going to take the next cup, and depending on what amount of salt you draw, that is how much salt you'll put in here. And we're just going to vary to see how much salt water does it really take for something to float? Do you have to put the 4 teaspoons in, which is what I did? Or do you have to put more or less salt to get it to float? And then you're going to do the same thing with another glass, except for you're going to put, after you put your salt water in, you're going to dump a little bit out, put your egg in, and then you're going to put fresh water over the top and see kind of how much fresh water do you want to add. How high do you want the egg to float? Do you want it to go lower? Just kind of play with the water a little bit. This is really an exploratory lab where you get to kind of decide how you want to make this work. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started on the lab, and then for the follow-up, for the assessment, you're going to be writing, you're going to write a short, maybe about 6 to 8 sentences of a news report, and in that news report, you need to make sure that you just explain what is happening with these eggs, and also you're going to have to explain what would happen in a freshwater estuary when all of these types of waters are mixing together. What do you think could possibly happen to any of the marine life in that area? Okay, let's go ahead and get started.